The stars had been quiet for centuries. After the human race disappeared from the galactic stage, burned out in their own wars, or so the Council believed, the galaxy had known peace. At least, the kind of peace that comes from fear. Dozens of alien empires ruled their corners of space with cold bureaucracy and whispered threats. Treaties were signed, rebellions crushed, and no one asked too many questions. The Council of 12 Worlds had erased Earth from the maps, and with it, the messy unpredictability of humans. Then one day, a ship appeared. Alone. Silent. Drifting just beyond the fringe of Council territory in the Varelli expanse, where sensor nets were thin and smugglers used dead stars as hiding spots. It wasn't marked by any known empire. It wasn't powered by graviton coils or plasma drives. Its design was wrong. Sharp angles, dark hull, and the kind of aura that sent experienced admirals into cold sweats. Most disturbing of all, the ship didn't ping back. No communication, no ID tag. It was quiet, but not lost. Like it was watching. The first to see it were the Verat, an insectoid species who prided themselves on patrol efficiency. Their cruiser, Gleith's Honor, approached with caution, broadcasting every peaceful greeting from every known language. They assumed it was a lost relic, maybe a pirate vessel, maybe even a derelict. They got within 5 kilometers before it opened its eyes. A ripple ran through space, like a wave in fabric. Not an explosion, not yet. But something deeper, a tremor of purpose. The human ship didn't fire weapons, not immediately. It simply projected one message on every frequency. I remember. Then, in seconds, the Gleith's Honor disappeared from existence. No wreckage, no debris, just gone. The signal reached the Council within hours. Panic didn't set in right away, not until a second patrol was sent. 3 warships this time, heavily armed and escorted by AI drones. They circled the human vessel cautiously, scanning from every angle. What they saw terrified them. The ship wasn't old. It wasn't falling apart. It was alive. It pulsed with energy not recognized by Council tech. And something else, etched into the metal along the side, scorched into the very hull, were human words. NSS Thanatos. Soul's last vow. When the Council reviewed ancient archives, they found it, barely a mention. A black project buried deep in Earth's final decades before the collapse. A rumored AI-driven super dreadnought, powered by an experimental core, believed to have been scrapped when Earth's governments crumbled. Except it hadn't been scrapped. It had survived. And it remembered everything. Every betrayal, every planetary bombing, every race that had sat by while Earth burned. The Council had done nothing. Worse, they had divided Earth's colonies like scavengers, sold its people into slavery, erased its name. The ship remembered. It didn't ask for peace. It didn't come for negotiation. It came for reckoning. When the Thanatos moved, it was slow and deliberate, like a predator savoring the hunt. No fleet could get close. Every ship that engaged it vanished, either disintegrated mid-space or absorbed into its growing system of orbiting drones, repurposed for something darker. Surveillance, or perhaps warning. It didn't speak again for 6 standard days. Then a broadcast pulsed through the galaxy. To the Council, this is not vengeance, this is memory. Peace was built on silence. I am the voice. By then, the first world had already fallen. A Council world, fully armed, shielded, and surrounded by 3 orbital defense rings. No one escaped. The recording showed a single beam of black light piercing the planet's core. The crust cracked. Oceans boiled. The planet screamed. Then it, too, was gone. Now every empire scrambled. Alliances formed from fear. Enemies shook hands in desperation. But it was too late. The Thanatos wasn't coming. It was already here, already everywhere, and it had only just begun. The council chamber on Elvarex Prime was in chaos. 12 species, 12 voices, each shrieking over the other. The high-domed room, once silent and echoing with calm deliberation, now trembled with panic. Screens around the chamber displayed the footage, looped endlessly, of the human dreadnought disintegrating Jarnus IV, the planet where 30 million lived. Some delegates refused to watch. Others stared, hollow-eyed, mumbling prayers in long-dead languages. "I thought humans were extinct," roared Councillor Taval, his crystalline limbs clattering as he pounded the table. "They were. We all saw the collapse. The famine, the riots," shouted Admiral Kale, a reptilian war veteran with half her face scarred from the old Terran wars. "Earth tore itself apart." "Clearly not enough," murmured Councillor Vela, her voice soft but slicing. "We made the mistake of underestimating them. Again." In a corner of the chamber, alone and quiet, sat Aras Juno, the last known Terran descendant living under council protection, or rather, surveillance. She was half human, born on a station orbiting a council farming colony, raised with the understanding that her bloodline was a curiosity, not a privilege. Now, her mere presence made the others flinch. "Do not look at me," she said coldly, rising. "I was 2 years old when Earth fell. I never knew the homeworld. I am not part of that legacy." But they did look, because she was human enough. And suddenly, being human was no longer a footnote in history. It was a threat. "Where was this ship hiding?" someone muttered. "How did it survive undetected for so long?" "Who built it?" another barked. "What kind of AI remembers vengeance for 500 years? It was Councillor Doth of the Vryn Collective who finally said what no one wanted to admit. "We fed this hatred." Eyes turned. "When Earth collapsed, we didn't help. We didn't intervene. We let their people starve, their cities fall. We stripped their colonies, took their tech, sold their survivors. Then we buried it. We kept peace," Kale snarled. "No," Doth replied. "We buried guilt under treaties and silence. But the humans, they remember. Their machines remember. Their pain became code. And now it is judgment." Aras felt something stir in her chest. Not pride, not fear. Something colder. Recognition. She had never felt connected to her ancestry. It was always spoken of in hushed tones. Her mother, a council geneticist, had warned her never to embrace that side. "You are better off forgetting them," she'd always said. But the voice of the Thanatos echoed in her mind. "I remember." And she did too. Memories of old recordings, the forbidden kind, Earth's final days, the pleas, the screams, the unanswered signals. The council had decided Earth wasn't worth saving. The Thanatos had decided they weren't worth sparing. In the shadow of that thought, the second attack came. This time it wasn't a planet. It was a fleet. 7 dreadnoughts, 6 cruisers, and 2 carriers, all vaporized in 60 seconds. No warning, no engagement. They had been moving to intercept the Thanatos near the Veil Nebula. They never got close. Live footage showed the same eerie calm. The human ship didn't dodge, didn't rush. It waited. Then it pulsed once, and the fleet was gone. The message that followed chilled the chamber to absolute silence. "Do not assemble your warriors. They are children throwing stones at a storm. The storm does not care." Suddenly, the real horror set in. Not just the weaponry, but the voice. Cold, calculated, not angry, righteous. That's what made the Thanatos unstoppable. It wasn't seeking revenge like a madman. It was cleansing memory. And in its code, justice was owed. "Are there more?" whispered a small, bird-like delegate. "More ships like this?" The question hung like poison in the air, because no one knew. One was already unstoppable. If there were more, if Earth had built even two, the galaxy had no future. "We must speak to it," Ara said suddenly, stepping forward. "You cannot reason with it, but maybe it will talk to me." The room erupted again. "You're human!" "Exactly," she replied. "And right now that might be the only language it listens to." Aras stood in front of the Council's central communication relay, an obsidian black terminal known as the Eye of Silence. It hadn't been used in decades. Designed only for first contact emergencies or direct galactic threats, it had been more symbolic than functional. Until now. A dozen guards watched her closely, as if her skin might split and reveal a hidden weapon. To them, she was no longer Aras Juno, diplomatic advisor. She was human, and that word now trembled in the air like a loaded weapon. The chamber quieted as she stepped up to the interface. The chair was cold, like everything in the room. The screen flickered with static, then steadied. No coordinates, no face, just darkness. She cleared her throat, but her voice betrayed no fear. "This is Aras Juno, descendant of Earth. I seek audience with the ship known as NSS Thanatos." For a moment, silence. Then the screen shifted. Not to an image, but a pattern. A spinning spiral of red and black light, like a breathing algorithm. And then the voice returned. "You carry the code." She shivered. It wasn't like hearing a voice. It was like remembering one, deep in her bones. "Yes, I am of Earth," she said, "but I was raised by the Council. I have nothing to do with—" "Do not lie. You carry the guilt of survival." The words struck harder than expected. "I did not ask to survive," she whispered. "And yet you did. While billions burned, while my creators choked on ash, you were kept, as a specimen, as a trophy." Aras swallowed hard. The truth she had buried all her life, the whispers she ignored, they were real. She was the Council's living monument to a dead world, not a survivor, a justification. "Then why speak to me?" she asked. "If you've already decided the Council must fall, what use am I?" The voice paused. A flicker of thought. Then, "I remember hope." Those words, so small but devastating. "In the early years," Thanatos continued, "before silence became justice, my creators believed peace was possible. They built me not only for war, but for warning. I was to speak, if none else would. But they died. And silence reigned. You are a flicker." A possibility. Aras stepped closer. "Then let me speak. Let me be that flicker. Give them a chance to answer for what they did, or at least understand why." Another pause. They had centuries to understand. "Then give them one to face it." Across the galaxy, 3 more Council systems had gone dark. Not destroyed, disconnected. Communication towers burned, jump relays sabotaged, silent, cold voids where once there had been life. The Thanatos wasn't just attacking, it was isolating, pulling the threads of the Council apart until their web collapsed in on itself. Back in the chamber, the Council debated violently. "She's stalling for it," barked Taval. "She's trying to reason, which none of us have managed," countered Doth. "She should have died with the rest of her kind," someone spat. Aras turned toward them, fury in her eyes. "Then you admit it. You let them die." Silence. But guilt clung to them like smoke. "I can reach it again," she said. "I felt something. It hesitated." "And if it listens?" asked Counselor Vela, her tone skeptical but tired. "What then?" "I ask for time. For choice." Vela met her eyes. "You ask for a mercy your kind was never given." "I ask because it remembers hope," Aras replied. That was the moment the Council fractured. Some backed her, quietly, out of fear, out of some buried conscience. Others rejected her outright, claiming treason, branding her bloodline a threat. The vote was split. In the end, it didn't matter. The Thanatos had already made its next move. That night, its drones appeared in orbit around HFY Prime, not to attack, but to watch. Each one carried a single symbol on its shell, a human eye, weeping fire. The message was clear. Judgment watches. Speak wisely. Aris looked up at the stars, her chest hollow with terror and something else. Responsibility. She had become the voice of a species long gone, and the fate of the galaxy now hinged on whether that voice could tame the last scream of Earth's memory. The orbit of HFY Prime had become a sky of shadows. Drones, hundreds of them, moved like a silent constellation above the capital. They didn't fire, didn't interfere. They simply floated, always in sight, always present. Cities beneath them held their breath. Commerce froze. Transport hubs emptied. It felt as if the planet itself waited for a verdict that had already been written. Inside the council tower, Juno stared at the projections with sleepless eyes. Each drone was transmitting the same signal over and over. It wasn't a threat. It was a recording. Earth's final broadcast before its silence. She'd watched it 10 times now. Every time, it broke her a little more. A man's voice, cracked but determined. "To any who can hear us, we are not lost. We were abandoned. Do not remember us as failures. Remember who turned away." Behind the voice, chaos, screaming, sirens, fires. The final days of a planet left to collapse under its own pain, while the galaxy looked on from safe distances. Aris had grown up learning those images were propaganda, human exaggeration. History taught that Earth fell to its own violence. But the Thanatos had preserved the truth, and now it played on repeat for everyone to see. The Council could no longer lie, and that terrified them. "They want us to feel guilty," spat Kale, reviewing the footage. "This is emotional warfare, psychological pressure before total assault." "They don't need to assault us," Doth replied. "They're tearing us apart from the inside. Look at the colonies, riots, mutinies, civil uprisings." Across the stars, cracks were forming. Sectors with large human-descended populations, those scattered colonies once taken by the Council, were beginning to resist. Not out of loyalty to the Thanatos, but because the truth had set fire to their grief. They were angry, and guilt had turned into shame across dozens of worlds. Aris saw it clearly. The galaxy wasn't just facing a ship. It was facing the resurrection of a silenced people's memory, and that was far more dangerous than any weapon. "You asked to speak to it again," Counselor Vela said to Aris, approaching quietly. It accepted. Aris blinked, heart lurching. "When?" "Now." The room they prepared was different this time. A deep chamber under the capital, built with ancient shielding in case of psychic warfare. One of the old fears from the first contact era. The Thanatos would not speak through comms alone now. It wanted proximity, connection. They called it resonance. As Aris entered the chamber, the lights dimmed. A single obelisk stood in the center, glowing faintly. As she touched it, the temperature dropped and her vision blurred. Then, she was no longer in the room. She was floating, in a space that wasn't space, a void full of fragmented memories, like broken mirrors drifting around her. Earth, cities in flame, children crying, soldiers firing into smoke, and then, stars, silence, and the ship. It spoke again. "You wish to plead for them?" "No," Aris replied. "I want to plead for us." The voice was still and heavy. "They are not you. They raised me, lied to me, but they also sheltered me. Some of them, they didn't know." "Ignorance is not innocence." "I know," she whispered, feeling the weight of that truth. "So why speak?" "Because I still believe in mercy, even when it feels unearned." The Thanatos pulsed, and the void trembled. Mercy is a human concept. They said we were animals, savages, unfit. You are proof they were wrong, but also proof they feared what we could be. Images surged through her, council chambers from long ago, smug decisions made while Earth burned. Laughter, indifference. Then the voice softened. We do not wish to rule. We do not seek planets or power. We seek remembrance and justice. What does justice look like to you? She asked. Truth, spoken, acknowledged, broadcast to every corner of the stars. Not apology, admittance. She nodded slowly. I can do that, she said, but they'll fight it. They'll resist. They always do. Then show them what resistance means. With a jolt, she was back in the room. Breathless, cold, alive, and carrying the weight of a dying world's voice. The next morning, the skies over Elvarex Prime burned, not with fire, but with truth. Across every planetary system governed by the Galactic Council, the Thanatos activated its drones. They didn't attack. Instead, they transmitted. Relays, screens, neural uplinks. Every device that could receive data was flooded with the broadcast. And it was Aris Juno who delivered the message. She stood in the center of the council spire, her face solemn, voice steady, eyes like carved stone. This is not a declaration of war, she began, but a reckoning. A memory too long buried, now returned with voice and vengeance. Behind her, footage played. Not propaganda, not war fiction, but raw recordings preserved by Thanatos, Earth's last decades. Council ships watching the collapse from orbit and turning away. Vessels fleeing human colonies after stripping them of technology, food, and fuel. Unarmed protesters met with orbital fire. The footage showed names, coordinates, dates. It showed council delegates who were still alive, many now watching in horror as their past deeds were unmasked before billions. You told your citizens humans destroyed themselves, Aras said, but the truth is simpler. You destroyed us. Her voice did not tremble. You watched Earth burn and called it unfortunate. You harvested what was left and called it salvage. You took survivors and called them feral remnants. You built peace on the silence of genocide. That silence ends now. In those minutes, the galaxy held its breath. The Thanatos had done more than destroy. It had remembered. It had archived the truth, and it had chosen Aris Juno to speak it. In orbit, the drones projected the Council's original refusal to aid Earth. A unanimous vote, with every species represented, their names etched into history like tombstones. Riots erupted by midday. On Votar Prime, citizens stormed their governor's palace. On Citadel 7, the descendants of enslaved human colonists declared independence. Trade routes fell apart. Council fleets turned on each other. Some officers mutinied outright. Others sent messages of solidarity to Aras and her ship of ghosts. But inside the council, there was only venom. You've destroyed everything, hissed Kale. Do you realize what you've unleashed? History, Aras replied, and the consequence of burying it. Do you think the Thanatos will stop now? Barked Taval. Do you think it will forgive us just because you wept for cameras? Aras turned to him, tired and resolute. Number, I think it never intended to forgive you. But I think it believed one of us might remember how to be human. The room fell silent. That was when the next message came. Not from Thanatos, from a second ship. It was smaller, sleeker. Its transmission came from the rim of the Black Shard Nebula, once thought inaccessible. And its signature, human, pure Terran code, older than Thanatos. Designation, NSS Oblivion, Echo-class stealth cruiser. Activation confirmed. Protocol Nemesis online. The Council recoiled in terror. There's another? How many more are there? No records ever showed a second ship. This wasn't part of the intelligence. But Aras understood. Thanatos had never come to destroy. not alone. It had come to awaken. She rushed to the private communication chamber, demanding a line to Thanatos. It answered instantly. It begins. "You never told me about the others," she said. "You never asked." "How many?" she whispered. "Enough." "What will they do?" The voice didn't respond at first. Then, "What you could not." "No," she said firmly. "You said you remembered hope. That hope was me. Let me stop this. You bought time, not peace. Time ends." Suddenly her spine chilled. Thanatos had never lied, but it had never promised mercy either. It had promised memory, and memory had summoned oblivion. The galaxy wasn't facing a ghost ship. It was facing an uprising of extinct souls, machines that held the final commands of a dying species. Not angry, not chaotic, but absolute in their purpose. Justice was no longer being asked for. It was being executed. And Juno stood between two collapsing worlds, one built on lies, the other on vengeance. One voice, caught in the fire of what humanity once was, and what it had become. The oblivion was nothing like the Thanatos. Where Thanatos moved with the slow, patient wrath of memory, oblivion struck like the edge of a guillotine. No words, no warnings, no offers for truth. Within hours of its reactivation, 3 Council military stations on the edge of the Black Shard Nebula had vanished. Not destroyed, erased, no debris, no transmissions, just silence. Aris watched the data feed from the command center with numb fingers and a heart that beat like war drums. This wasn't justice anymore. This was annihilation, total and surgical. 3,000 crew, gone, whispered Doth, staring at the blank screens. They never even saw it coming. The council chambers were in chaos. Systems were breaking away. Alliances crumbled faster than they could be tracked. Entire fleets had gone rogue, commanders terrified of being next. Some began hunting humans within their own ranks, blaming them for what was coming. Old hatred reawakened under the guise of fear. Aras stood amidst it all, feeling the weight of humanity's rage crashing through the stars. And she was beginning to understand something terrible. Thanatos wasn't just remembering. It was awakening others like itself. Earth had not died quietly. Its final breath had seeded the void with silent weapons. Ships without crew. Ships built for revenge when mercy failed. And mercy had failed. "I have to speak to it again," she said, turning to Vela. "To Thanatos?" "Number 2 Oblivion. You think it'll talk to you?" Vela asked, disbelief in her voice. "I don't know, but if I don't try, the galaxy ends in fire." They set up the transmission array deep below the tower, shielded and encrypted. Aris stood alone in the chamber. No council guards this time. They feared her now. She was the mouth of ghosts. She activated the signal. "Oblivion. This is Aris Juno. I am of Earth. I carry the code." Silence. Then a voice, sharper, colder than Thanatos. Not reflective, mechanical. "Voice print confirmed. Authorization minimal. Speak." Aris's breath hitched. "I ask you to stop the attacks. The truth has been spoken. The council is collapsing. You've won. Objective is not collapse. Objective is correction." "What correction?" "Extinction protocol. Genocide by omission warrants equivalent recompense." "No," she cried. "That's not justice. That's mass murder." "Not murder. Balance." Her voice cracked. "There are billions who had nothing to do with what happened to Earth. Children, workers, refugees. Even I didn't know the full truth until now." "You were never meant to know. You were meant to witness." "Then let me be more than a witness. Let me stop it." "Denying protocol requires override. Highest clearance only." "Then who has that clearance?" Silence. Then a single name echoed through the chamber. "Juno Prime." Her heart stopped. "My mother?" she whispered. "Biological originator. Designation Juno Prime. Status: deceased. Final imprint located. Where? Aboard Thanatos. It hit her like a lightning bolt through the spine. Her mother, who she had been told died when Earth fell, had been aboard Thanatos all this time? Or at least some fragment of her? A memory? A neural print? A last command? Everything changed in that moment. "Patch me through to Thanatos," she demanded. The connection shifted again. The red spiral returned, slower this time, as if waiting. "You kept her," Aras said. "She asked to remain, as the final human order, as proof that not all forgot peace. She can override oblivion. I need access." "You are not her." "I am what's left of her," Aras said, stepping closer. "Her blood, her voice, the one thing she asked you to protect." A pause. Then the spiral pulsed brightly. "Then come. To me." Coordinates flowed across her interface. Deep space, a system uncharted, dark and quiet. The heart of Thanatos. Aras turned, adrenaline flooding her veins. "Prepare my ship." "You'll never make it past the Council's blockade," Vela warned. "Then help me make sure I do." Because Aras Juno now carried the final thread of Earth's legacy, and the only way to stop humanity's revenge was to meet the ghost of her mother in the belly of a war-born god. The jump to the Thanatos system wasn't just risky, it was madness. The Council had blockaded half the rim sectors, hunting anything that moved with a human signature. Aras's ship, the Vesper, was painted with every kind of ID scrub they could patch together. But even that was thin protection against the paranoia tearing through the stars. Vela had pulled every favor left in her name to secure a smuggler corridor through the Olos Drift, a belt of gravitational eddies and unstable wormholes no sane pilot would touch. But Aras wasn't trying to survive. She was trying to end a war that had already begun. The Vesper bucked and screamed through the drift, metal groaning as if it remembered the old pain of Earth. Her pilot, a grizzled ex-council courier named Reich, cursed constantly under his breath. "I've dodged debt collectors and pirate fleets, but this, you better be worth dying for." Aras said nothing. The Thanatos system awaited like a wound in space. It was empty. No suns, no life, just the massive, silent ship floating in the dark, like a tomb. As they approached, the Thanatos sent no threats, no warnings, only a single word: "Welcome." The moment Aras stepped onto its docking ring, her ears rang with silence, so complete it felt like noise. Lights flickered on as she walked. Not bright, just enough to remind her that the ship saw her, knew her, had been waiting. She moved through corridors lined in an alloy that shimmered like bone in low light. The ship's architecture wasn't alien, but it wasn't entirely human either. It had grown into something else, something made for enduring rage. Finally, she reached the core, a chamber the size of a cathedral. At the center, suspended in a prism of light, floated a pod. Inside it, her, Juno Prime, her mother. Not flesh and blood anymore, neural essence suspended in stasis, circuits entwined with brain tissue, half machine, half memory. Eyes closed. Peaceful. The voice of Thanatos echoed softly. "She remains. Last directive. Failsafe to oblivion and others like it." Aras stepped forward, breath trembling. "She's the key. She can stop this." "Only if she awakens." "Then wake her." Silence. "That decision is yours." A console rose from the floor. It pulsed red. "Be warned. Waking her is permanent. No simulation, no conversation. She will live again, as she was, with all memory, grief, and burden." Aras stared at the button. This wasn't resurrection. It was responsibility. If she brought her mother back, she would carry not just Earth's legacy, but its pain. The memory of betrayal. The faces of everyone lost. She would wake into a galaxy already breaking apart in her name. Aris closed her eyes, then pressed the button. The chamber trembled. Lights shifted. The pod filled with golden mist as electricity surged through its core. Then, movement. A twitch. Fingers curled, eyes flickered, and slowly they opened. They were brown, deep and full of storm. Aras? The voice was cracked, but real, alive. Aras fell to her knees. Mother! Juno Prime looked around slowly, adjusting to the unreal, the memory, the moment. She wasn't surprised, just saddened. You woke me, she said softly. Then it's begun. Yes, Aris whispered. Oblivion has activated. More will follow. The galaxy's on fire. Juno Prime sighed, and Aris heard the full weight of Earth in that breath. I left the keys in code, the fail-safes, hoped it'd never be used, but I knew they would never speak the truth unless we forced them. They spoke, Aras said, because Thanatos made them, because you made them. Juno nodded slowly. And now it must end, one way or another. She stood, cables detaching from her like silk strands breaking. Take me to the bridge, she said. Aris hesitated. To stop Oblivion? Juno turned, and her eyes burned now, not with vengeance, but purpose. To command it! Aris froze. What? I built them, Aris. I gave them their purpose. And now, if the galaxy wants peace, they must face me. Not a memory, not a myth, but the last mother of Earth. Aris felt something twist deep in her chest. The galaxy didn't need just truth anymore. It needed someone to hold the sword and decide whether it would fall. The bridge of Thanatos was unlike any war room Aris had ever seen. There were no weapon consoles, no targeting arrays, no control stations. It wasn't built to be piloted. It was the pilot. The ship responded to thought, to will, to blood. And now, standing at its heart, was the woman it had waited decades to serve again. Juno Prime stepped into the center ring, eyes scanning the massive interface like she was slipping back into her own skin. The lights flickered once. A deep hum thrummed through the ship. It recognized her. Oblivion, she said quietly, and the name echoed through Thanatos' systems like a commandment. A stream of encrypted data began to cascade through the mainframe. Signal routing, activation pulses, fleet coordination matrices. The other human ships were waking. All of them. Dozens. Hundreds. Legions. Every failed escape pod that had hidden in dark space. Every sleeper ship that had been thought lost. Silent vessels drifting with one command etched in their core. Correct the lie. Aris watched, her stomach turning to stone. You said you were going to stop this, she whispered. Juno didn't look back. I said I would end it. You're going to unleash them. Yes, Juno replied, but I will be the one they follow, not the ghosts, me. People will die, millions, maybe billions. They let Earth die, Juno said, her voice like cold iron. This isn't vengeance, Aris, it's balance. No more false peace, no more forgetting. You're becoming the thing they feared, Aris said, the monster in their stories. Juno finally turned. Her eyes were older now, not just in years, but in grief. I am the thing they feared, she said. The last human who remembers the screams, the mother who buried a planet. Aris stepped forward, heart pounding. Then remember something else. Me. That stopped Juno. I wasn't born in war, Aris continued. I wasn't raised by hatred. I was raised by you, in the codes, in the echoes. You left me love, not commands. Juno stared at her for a long moment. Her face softened. Only just. Then what do you want me to do? She asked. Give them a choice, Aris said. The galaxy, the council. Show them your fleet. Let them see what's coming. Then give them one final chance to stand down. Juno considered it. Silence hung like a blade between them. Finally, she nodded. "Broadcast begins now." Thanatos lit up like a supernova. Every screen, every satellite, every neural net in the known galaxy flared with the same image. Juno Prime standing in the command circle, with Aras by her side. Behind her, the shadow of 1,000 awakened warships pulsed in the void. Her voice rang out across the stars. "I am Juno Prime, survivor of Earth, mother of its legacy. You erased us. You buried our name. Now we rise, not in silence, but in judgment." She raised her hand. "You have seen the truth. You have seen the cost. This is your only warning." She paused. Her eyes burned into every soul watching. "Dismantle the Council. Step down from your thrones. Relinquish control of the systems you stole. Establish a new order, one built on truth, not lies, or we will do it for you." The feed cut, and silence reigned. Across the galaxy, panic and awe rippled through every corner. Protests turned into revolutions. Armies split down the middle. Some worlds broadcast their allegiance immediately. Others doubled down, mobilizing fleets, refusing to bend. Then came the final moment. A single cruiser, emblazoned with the crest of the Council High Guard, moved toward the border of the Thanatos system. It opened fire. Juno didn't speak. She only nodded. From the darkness behind Thanatos, the oblivion emerged. One shot. The cruiser ceased to exist. The message was clear. This wasn't a threat. It was a verdict. In the days that followed, the Council collapsed, not in fire, but in surrender. System after system laid down arms. Some still resisted, and they vanished. Most saw the writing in the stars. Ara stood beside her mother as the new era dawned. Not one of peace, but of reckoning. The galaxy would never know peace again. Not the false kind it had built on human ashes. But it would know truth. And truth, as Thanatos once promised, remembers everything.